Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Micro Solidarity Podcast. This is round two of my conversation with Andrew Rose from Fractal in New York City. We had a conversation just recently about what it's like being a community founder. And when I published this conversation, it had a really big impact. Like more comments and more engagement and more enthusiasm from people than a lot of the other interviews that I posted. So we thought it could be useful to have a follow-up conversation, go deeper into some of the questions that came up. Um, and just actually maybe an interesting place to start is like, what sense do you make of it, Andrew, that people responded so well? Like what do you imagine is new that they hadn't heard before or something like that?
I've been thinking about this a little bit. I feel like I still don't have a perfect answer. Maybe you can help me think about it as well. I think tagging people was helpful. Like there was definitely this moment where I had, five of my friends who I know listened to it because they told me they listened to it and they told me privately that they thought it was good. And I tagged them publicly and I was like, please give me public comments because I feel like you didn't tell me much when you told me it was good or whatever in passing. And and then I think that started a bit of a chain reaction of people listening to it and taking it seriously. So there is something meta aside from I think there's something in the podcast itself. There's also something a little bit meta of like there are objects that we start to pay attention to and then talk about more. And the podcast kind of became one of those things for that day, which I think
Mm.
was itself quite powerful. With respect to the content itself, um, I think I think a lot of people didn't realize that the community organizers behind all these events weren't just like kind of having fun and improvising. Um, and it's true that we do have fun and improvise, and like in a lot of cases, that's how we got into it. But like, there is a science here, in fact, that
Yeah,
is rarely talked about.
yeah,
And I think you and I both got to it quite fast last time, and people were kind of like, "Whoa, there's a whole thing."
yeah, yeah. I think for me, one of the things that stuck out was like perhaps in this network broadly, there's a bias towards having fun. It's like have fun and be yourself. It's kind of like the main motto,
Yeah,
and and a desire maybe for things to be a bit more concrete, a bit more practical, a bit more like we're actually making real projects that we care about, but people not quite knowing how to cross the chasm from hanging out to like actually building infrastructure.
yeah,
Um, and it really felt like you were inhabiting the sort of like temporary dad or uncle of the network and saying like, hey, it's time to grow up, take some
yeah,
responsibility. I know you got to eat your vegetables, but you're going to love it. We're going to have a great dessert afterwards.
yeah,
And people liked being a little bit, getting the sermon a little bit.
yeah.
And then some bangers as well about just this, especially this topic of like, um, when someone is lowering the quality of the room, make an intervention quickly and don't let that fester and take it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the like kind of hey, you can be adult about this, and that's okay. You know,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
there's funny words for this that people use, but I think there's a little bit of like reclaiming your power or
Hmm.
something that people have
Hmm.
given it up. They came onto the internet and they're like, this is a fundamentally inclusive place. And then I think part of the podcast that we talked about last time was sort of like, hey, the internet and real life are not the same thing. They're very different, actually, and you can kind of reclaim your in-person power and sovereignty over your boundaries and just do
Yeah.
stuff in person. It doesn't
Yeah.
have to be like the internet, it doesn't have to be fundamentally inclusive. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, so I feel like when you asked me to come back on, originally we wanted to maybe chat about uh, some of the concepts around asking for help more specifically
Yeah.
because they weren't completely clear and a lot of people came with questions, yourself included. We could start there if you want, or we could start with there are a bunch of viewer questions also. I think that could be interesting
Yeah. I
places to
think
talk about.
I think asking for help is an interesting piece of it because I think again one of the reasons that the people liked the podcast, it seemed like you were kind of inhabiting a particular kind of persona almost. And a lot of us could see like, oh, I want to be like that. And there's something about there's a confident way of asking for help.
Mm,
Um, that says, I'm doing something valuable, I'm making a contribution to the world, and it's a bottlenecked by something that you could easily contribute. Let's go, we're making something.
yeah,
And I literally listened back to the conversation three times, and you said a line about you've just got to ask for help every day, find someone new, ask a new way, and you talked about how what makes, the really big successful startups and so on. It's like they got the right person in the room and they made the right request. That's the thing that makes the difference. Um, and I've just been reflecting on my own attitude towards asking for help. And it's conflicted and it's complicated. And I just thought it could be useful to workshop it a little bit, or open it up a
Yeah,
bit. So
yeah.
like, um,
Let's
I
unpack
had
it.
a really good example of asking for help with Casatilo, right? So I sent a tweet at the start of the year saying I need to borrow 50 grand so I can pay the first year of rent on this community space. Who can help? And it took 3 hours and I had 50 grand pledged and from trustworthy people that I know. So it's just like,
Huge,
bam. And
huge.
I know that before I even sent the tweet, the state of mind I was in, I was like, I know that this is gonna get an immediate agreement. Like
Yeah,
I have this sort of alignment and clarity and confidence and everything, and a sense of knowing who's out there and what they care about. Like this ask is going to meet a yes really quickly.
yep,
So I know how to do that, but there's something else that I don't know how to do, which is asking when I'm in doubt or in strife or like it's actually vulnerable that like I don't know if I'm going to get what I need.
yep.
And that like it feels like I've only got a limited number of coins that I can spend when I ask for help and don't get the result that I need, that I very quickly become demotivated and feel like I'm not an adult anymore. I kind of lose some of my mojo somehow. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to think more together about like, what do you know about asking for help? Because I'm sure it's something that I can learn more about.
The coins thing is like, uh, everyone's got it. My instinct is just like it's a bad way to think about. It's a bad way to think about your social capital. I don't think. I think it's interesting. Like it's pointing at something. There is an asset here. There's like a trustworthiness, a desire to help Rich, or a desire for the community to support Rich in his projects and in his aims. um, that like you can kind of try to abstractly integrate across society and be like, okay, am I like gaining in that pool or am I losing in that pool? I think that metaphor is lossy enough that we should be skeptical, but like let's take it as kind of serious for a second. Even within that conception of social capital, where you have some quantity and you've been spending it and people haven't really been, or you've been like spending it to try to make requests and people haven't really been responding, so it just feels like it's diminishing extra. um I suspect you could reframe the type of ask from an ask that costs you coins to an ask that wins you coins, and there are such asks. um and so that's one way to kind of build back the mojo, or to regain the feeling that like the world's on your side, is like, what are
Mm,
the sorts of things I can ask for help on where people would be delighted to help, literally delighted in the sense that they would be like, wow, Rich is such a cool guy to ask for help for that sort of thing. I want to help. That sounds really fun and interesting and cool. um
mm,
I think that that's a good way to kind of get back into it. At least those are like the
mm,
easy asks. So it's like, ask somebody to come over and cook dinner with you, or like ask somebody to um go on a podcast with you, or
mm,
you kind of have all these things where you're like, ask people to come participate in
mm,
something interesting that you're hosting or doing. And then that kind of takes you outside of the founder frame for a little bit and just into the like, do people like me and want me to succeed or whatever frame, including things like asking for feedback or asking for conversations about asking, being like, hey, lately I've been really scared to ask for help. Can I ask people a meta help right now? Are you willing to like DM me if you would help me?
mm,
Just kind of in an arbitrary way. Like if you would help me with like
mm,
any arbitrary task, not something in particular, like just please reach out to me or respond to this or whatever. I'd love to talk to you about what you would like to help me with, or what sorts of things you would help me with, and just kind of like get feedback there and see, and then be like, do you feel like for any reason you might not want to help me? You can go spicy
mm,
with it, and
mm,
people are into that sort of thing. And then with respect to the founder energy, going back to the original thing, um, I think there is a certain shamelessness which I don't want to completely endorse, but I also don't want to disregard, that is required when you're doing something much harder than anybody realizes or much harder than
yeah.
anybody anticipates from the outside. Like it is in fact very stressful and very difficult to run a business during the first 2 years. I think this way about parents. Parents are like the number one easiest thing to be like, huh, are people delusional while asking for help? It's like, well, I was 100% delusional while asking for help. Like I tell parents, the number one thing I tell parents when when they find out that they're expecting, and if they ask for my advice, is just like, hey, oftentimes I'm talking to the dads. I'm like, hey, dude, uh, here's the thing. Like, there is no family, there is no set of people, there is no person who is more important than you, except your wife. It's like you and your wife. You are the most important people for at least a year, a whole year. Like not like 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks. Like definitely that. Like you're like more than the most important people, for that long. But like for like a whole year, you're the most important people. And like all the other people can like literally go fuck themselves. And you have to have that attitude a little bit, and you have to realize that other people are like, yes, some people are antisocial. Like some people will be like, hey, dude, I feel like in our relationship, you haven't really been contributing very much lately and giving me my emotional energy back or whatever. Some people like super, super antisocial behavior. The person will be like, dude, I had a kid like 6 months ago. Uh, so forgive me, that it's been hard, but the vast majority of people aren't antisocial and secretly wish you ask for more help, and they don't know how to help, and they're sitting on the sidelines. And this happened to me over and over and over again. I would feel alone as a parent. I would finally get a chance to see my friends. I'm very forthcoming with my friends, so like once I was with them, I'd be like, damn, it's just been so lonely and I feel like it's really hard. And even though I get so much help, I still feel like it's hard. And they're like, well, we don't feel like we're giving you that much help, is what they would say to me. I felt like they were giving me all this help and I was using up all my coins or whatever. And they were
Mm,
like, we don't feel like we're actually being used that much. Like, why
mm,
haven't I had to, why haven't I had to do any sleepless nights? Why
mm,
haven't I had to like babysit the baby? Why haven't I had to take the baby to my house instead of it being at your house? Like, why haven't you asked me to do, they were just basically just like, you haven't asked me to do anything actually hard. You've only
mm.
asked me to do like little baby things. And, and I was sort of like, oh shit, like I didn't realize you guys were into that.
Mm,
Um, So I think founding a company is a little bit similar to having a child in this sense of like for the first couple years, it's about you and it's not about other people. And so like you get to keep spending. You can like go into debt with the coins actually. Like you
yeah.
just get to keep making asks. And like if
Yeah.
somebody is like, hey, I'm kind of offended that you keep making asks but not helping me with my projects, you can be like, fuck off. It's the first year of my business and it's really hard. And like I will help you, but give me a year or two
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is about me. This is like the rich show for now.
So I'm getting, you said some stuff at the start, which to me was like how to get out of a rut, So
Yeah.
like come make dinner with me or something, like make small requests that are easy for people to say yes to, and that you start to remember like, oh, I'm a person, people like me, everything's fine. And you kind of interrupt that negative spiral of like, oh, I'm miserable. I'm a worm.
Right.
Um, so that's the first chapter is get out of the rut. And then the second chapter is actually like maybe stretch and test the limits of like how much help are your friends willing to give you? They can have
Yeah.
that conversation maybe. Um, that makes a lot of sense. And especially it's not just starting a business in our case, it's like the business is secondary to our
Right.
communal objective. It's like we're really trying to contribute something meaningful to the world and meaningful to
Yeah.
our friends in particular. And so they're extra motivated to help because they see like we're spearheading something that's actually for all of us, and we just happen to be the ones that are in the position to be the founders right now, but like it could be anyone. Um,
Yeah.
so they are motivated. I think I had one sort of insight slash question I had was I think it's a slightly different category of asking for help, where you must have had this happen. Uh, there are people that are like further down the path, whether they're like more intelligent, more educated, more successful
Sure.
in their career, older, wealthier, like just people who are kind of like you, they see some commonality with you, but
Yeah.
they're older and more successful. And I reflected after our conversation and noticed like, hey, there's actually a few people I know that have expressed some admiration for me. They're really wealthy and they've actually tried to help me in a couple of ways. And they've just taken a guess on how to be helpful. And it's been like a nice gesture, but it hasn't made a huge difference. And actually,
Yeah.
I think the correct move is for me to get back to them and say, like, hey, I'm in a phase where I really need some help, and I wonder if you're in a position to do something for me. And like, can we? I don't know exactly how to approach the conversation. I'm like cagey about it.
Yeah.
But I suspect the kind of gestures that they've made was like a gesture of friendship, anticipating that I would sort of reciprocate and be like, so this is what I'm up to and this is what I need. Um,
Yep.
so yeah,
I
like
would
the small
I would ask
handful
for
of like,
advice
yeah,
on the specific category of help that you need, and I would make sure that you present, like, obviously asking for money is sensitive for good reason, right? It's like it's a big deal. Money is worth a lot. Even if you're wealthy, it's worth a lot. And so the it's like you're correct. I think you're not correct to be cagey. It's bad to be cagey, which is probably why you haven't asked for help. Is you're like, I don't want to ask for help in a cagey way. But on the other hand, I think it's of course wrong not to ask for help. Like they want to mentor you and they want to help you. So I think the oftentimes the approach I take if I'm feeling nervous or I don't feel like I know what's on the table to ask for necessarily yet, is I will sort of say like, hey, here's the phase where we're at. It's almost like a little bit of an update. That's like, here's where I'm at. I'm having some actually quite specific problems. Um, could I ask for your advice? Like, I think what we want to do is, and you can say that after you have an in-person conversation with them, or you can like try to format it asynchronously. But you can be like, here are the specific problems we're having. Here are the specific like budget shortfalls or whatever, if it's budgetary fundamentally. And here are kind of like our main ways that we're working on solving it right now. The thing that would actually just make this easiest for us is if we found donors for like X amount of money for this amount of time, and they would be repaid on this schedule. Um, and then it was sort of like, I would love to ask your advice for finding some donors for this category, basically. Like, do you know anybody? Do you know what sort of pitch would be, whatever, would be
mm,
welcome here? And then if that conversation is a conversation you've already had with them, like as a possible donor and not just a friend, or as a possible funder is not just a friend, you can of course just approach them directly and be like, hey, like here's what we're doing. These are the details. Like, are you interested um, to invest
yeah.
at this rate or whatever? Are you interested to donate at this rate? If you haven't had that
I,
conversation yet, just ask for advice instead.
yeah, yeah. So I'm imagining having this conversation, and there's this like a gross feeling in me. There's a kind of humiliation feeling,
Yeah.
like because, and I think it's like it's something about. I think it's a kind of like class issue. Like, um, uh, it's kind of embarrassing to. It's somehow embarrassing to make contact with wealth almost. It's like I'm just so aware of like what I didn't have growing up, or like the ways that um I feel like with money stuff, it's like I don't know. I sort of feel like the way a teenage or like adolescent man feels about sex or something. There's this sort of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why?
Yeah.
This is like
Yeah.
really cringy and gross. And I'm like, I don't want to be seen like that. I want to just keep
Yeah.
my private shit private. But I really think that that's like one of the ways that I need to grow up, and that I'm going to grow up by like being in contact with the right kind of people that are just going to like transmit a little bit of their attitudes and their ways of thinking, more
Yeah.
so than any like grant of like here's X amount of money or something. Like it's actually making
Yeah.
contact with the attitude and the way of thinking.
Yeah, exactly. And like that's the core thing that they can help you with also. It's like, yeah, maybe they could help you by giving you the grant, but like they could really help you by just being like, I'm nervous about this. You just like
Mm.
directly have the meta
Yeah,
conversation because that's the
yeah,
blocker.
yeah.
Um, it's like, oh, one of the weird things is like, here's my project. I'm extremely excited about it. I think it's world changing. Like we're on a good trajectory. I'm happy with the project. I just need this. And for some reason, I'm extremely nervous to talk to anyone about it. Like,
Yeah,
do you have
yeah,
advice for me? I feel like you would have really good advice for somebody in my
yeah,
shoes here
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
And have them at a conversation. I bet they have good advice for you. Like I'm definitely not an expert on this and not the best person to talk to. Um, there are people who are much, much, much better at fundraising than me. And I like to be like self-made much more. I think more so like you as well.
Mm.
But certainly it's something like you
Yeah,
have all the right attitudes. It's something to grow up about with
yeah,
myself as well.
yeah, yeah. Okay. It feels gross, but I'm gonna have to do it.
just I don't know. I think like the core thing is realizing that you have wholesome intent with respect to the resources of other people. Even like no matter how wealthy the person is. It's like I treasure you and your resources. I will do well with them. I will steward them. I will turn them into more resources. Like
Yeah,
any investment will be like returned many, 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 many times over.
yeah,
Either directly in the form of monetary compensation because this is an investment, or if it's some sort of donation, many, many times over in terms of impact. Like this is
yeah,
going to honor, it's going to honor you, you know, in all sorts of
yeah,
ways. And uh, I think that's my suspicion is that that's the right attitude. Although again, I haven't fundraised substantial amounts of money, so it's not an area of expertise for me.
yeah. The thing that's felt best for me so far in this journey is like just genuinely making friends with people and not thinking about them as like, oh, they're a wealthy person and they're gonna, but
Yeah,
it's just
of
like, do we
course.
have common interests and do we like doing stuff together? And then it
Yeah,
feels natural to talk about the way that I cringe or what I need or,
yeah,
but it's the intermediate step where we don't really have a relationship of intimacy yet, but I'm asking for something. That's
yeah,
where it gets like really awkward.
yep.
Um,
Yeah, you can also just always lead with like, hey, can I ask you something? I feel kind of awkward about it,
yeah,
or whatever.
yeah,
Um, uh, anyway,
yeah, that's good. Did you have more loaded up on the asking for help channel?
just do it. Yeah, just do it
Has
more.
there has have there been pivotal moments for you where you felt like that was the button that got you out of jail or that created the success?
We do barn raisings every once in a while. We mentioned this in the last podcast, and Toshin actually asked like, I want a barn raising how to like how to do it, which is not necessarily something that we can do in a podcast form. That's more of a written document, but the those have always been pivotal to me in the sense that they like show me how much support there is and how much people want to help. Um, and I'd say the other thing is like there will be more pivotal moments for me in the future that I'm like looking forward to almost. There's like things I need to ask for help for, but I'm not quite ready to even get started. And something interesting about like the anticipation. I don't know when this happened, but it's like the anticipation of being able to ask for help on a big thing now excites me quite a
Yeah,
lot and is one of
yeah,
the things that causes me to look forward to doing big projects. I think for other people, like asking for help is something they dread. Um, there is like just a really beautiful and wonderful thing that's like, oh, we're all building the world together. And I wonder, I wonder when that started. I actually don't know.
mm. Yeah. I can see it on the horizon.
Yeah.
Like that there's a version where I just have to play my role and then expose the world my APIs and say like, this is
Right.
what I'm capable of. This is what I'm
Yeah.
lacking. You're
Yeah.
probably really strong in that area. Let's plug together and look what we can turn into. And
Yeah,
it doesn't.
it does helpful. I mean, Visa talks about switchboard operators, right? Like part of it, part of what's going on here collectively at the kind of communal intelligence level is nobody is capable of asking for all the help that they need or knowing all the help that they need, even in advance. And we all kind of have to look out for each other. So like a level two to asking for help that you could add here is sort of like create environments where everyone asks for help on their friend's behalf already. And even further, like create environments where people are kind of actively seeking out opportunities to ask for help for their friends, ask for help for themselves, and kind of pushing the meta forward almost.
Mm,
Because in that case, you get like this insanely dense network of, people say like mutual aid, but you obviously want it to go toward very serious projects. So I think there's like a find the most serious people, help them, and ask them to help you both, and then kind of join them and just bring more people along.
mm.
It's something that I suspect you at Casa Tilo could play a big role in for the people who visit. And by thinking of yourself as like modeling the good there,
Yeah.
maybe that also encourages you to be brave to ask for more
Yeah.
help.
Yeah. We did a good event like 5 years ago, which included like basically a bunch of activists and a bunch of people who fund like radical social change work.
Yeah.
And we're like, we're just gonna make a nice event that people are, convivial and making friendships and getting to know each other. And like, of course, the consequence of that is like a bunch of the funders wound up funding a bunch of these projects.
Yeah.
And it's like a really high leverage thing to do where I get to avoid the cringe of me asking for help. I'm just setting up all of
Yep,
this
yep, yep, yep,
help
yep, yep,
exchange. And
yep,
also, by the way, some of that's coming back my way as well.
yep. Yeah, I feel like that's how I feel right now too. I'm kind of in a phase where I'm like, realistically, I could probably use a bunch more help, and I should probably be taking my own advice here. Um, and it's like it's a cool thing to set up environments where everyone else is helping each other and where people are
Mm,
getting a lot of help. Um, because you kind of you realize that more, you internalize it more. Um, but certainly, like I've had it on my bucket list for a long time to find a mentor who
mm,
or at least to like reach out to more of the mentors who I just read on the internet because I just feel like my projects are now interesting enough that I have things to ask about
mm.
explicitly, and it's still like it's just a little bit too nerve-wracking to me. Um,
Hmm.
it's hard.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah,
it
just
is
wait
hard.
until you're grown up to the point where you don't need help anymore, and then you can contact them.
Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, once once I've surpassed all of their accomplishments, then I can ask them for help. I think
Yeah,
maybe
cool.
that.
Great, 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 great. Yeah, I almost feel like at the moment I'm doing this thing where I'm like trying to record a short video every day, like learn about this
Yeah,
video-based social media. And I think I just literally need to do the same kind of thing for this help me project and like
yeah,
reach out to a whole bunch of people I've had great conversations with in the past and be like, hey, I'm learning how to ask for help. I want to have a conversation with you. Seems like you like me. Is there something that I need that you'd be happy to support me with? Like, I think some kind of um making a little marathon or something like that for myself
yeah.
would probably shift something.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That seems exactly right. Um, if you want to organize a group, maybe we should create a little group chat and we should have like
Yeah,
daily like go do it right now,
yeah,
this
yeah,
instant.
yeah. Yeah, I can imagine this could even be an event, because this is interesting that you notice on Twitter, um, whenever someone actually has the courage to say, "Hey, I need to crowdfund this. I want to go to this event," or "My house is burnt down," or
Yeah,
when people actually do it, they usually get crowdfunded in an instant as well. So like, there's that kind of help where people feel like, "Oh, this is within my means, and I feel good about contributing."
yeah. Okay. Is it worth going to some listener questions?
Yeah, I was thinking that same thing. Which
Mhm.
ones were sitting on top for you?
So I think one of the ones that would be really fun to talk about with you, Jessica Alonso wrote, I found myself wanting to hear you guys talk about romance within your communities in non-gossipy ways. How things go, how that affects stuff, what has surprised you, etc. Hard left turn into romantic thinking. I wrote a
It's-
tweet a while back about poly also that I feel like is interesting to talk about poly in community because it's one of these things that you're like kind of not allowed to talk about. And I feel like I have very nuanced opinions that are actually impossible to characterize in any sort of small format that are good for a conversation. And I also feel like you and I can talk about some of the like forbidden community topics with respect to romance.
yeah,
So I
yeah,
don't know. What are your high level thoughts here?
yeah. My high level thoughts. I think that I mean I'm so fascinated by romance at the moment, and it feels like just a natural part of my curiosity around community building. It's like, well, what is community building? It's relationships, and like, what's the most important relationship for most people? It's that partnership bond, um, and how obvious it is, like with what you're doing, with what I'm doing, the things that I'm proud of, they're sitting on top of this foundation of being in a good partnership.
Right.
And how many good people I know that are not in good partnerships. And like that seems like a coordination problem. It seems like there's a kind of bug in the social code. It seems like there's an issue that like I just feel the urge to tinker with and like get in there. Like I just today before this call was on a call with a mutual friend of ours, and I'm like, okay, you're serious about finding a wife. Let's talk about it. Like, let's talk about your attitudes towards romance and what are you doing that's disqualifying yourself and these sorts of things. And like I really, yeah, it seems kind of cringy to name it, but it's just so present for me. Like I really want to. At first, I was thinking, oh, I want to do matchmaking. I want to introduce people to each other, but that I think is pretty hit or miss. It's more
Yeah.
like I want to create the conditions. One is I want to work one-on-one with people to understand how they think about romance. Two is I want to create the conditions where new people are meeting each other, where they're at their best. They're sort of presenting the best sides of themselves, and they're like predisposed to forming romance. So like people getting married because they met at our space is probably like my most important KPI.
Let's go. That's huge. Um, okay. At risk, I don't want to play a humble character for this podcast because I feel like people liked what I was not playing a humble
Yeah.
character last time. I could on the topic of romance.
No,
Like
no, no,
I know
no.
nothing.
Be
You know,
tough.
caveat everything with I'm a fucking idiot. You know, I'm
You got
27
one out of
years
one
old.
marriages, can't be
Yeah,
wrong.
I have 1 out of 1 marriage. I have a daughter. We love her. We love each other. We live a happy life. Our marriage is the foundation of everything we do. Yes, but also obviously I'm a kid and I don't know anything. However, what percentage of people in your community are married, Rich?
Very few. Very, very few.
Nobody's married here. I hosted a Sunday brunch one time, and I got in front of the community, and somebody asked me. I was like ranting to my friend about how nobody's married. He was like, "You should just tell this to everyone instead of just me." So we got everyone together, and then I was kind of like, "Raise your hand if you're married," and just nobody raised their hand. I raised my hand, and my wife raised our hands, and then there was like somebody's parents were there, and so that was great. You know, there was like some multi-generational stuff going on, and then other than that, there was not a single person between the ages of like 20 and 40 who was married in the entire room. And, you know, so I was just like, guys, what's going on? Like, what are you doing? Like, you're all hot and young and capable and smart. Like, just find the first person and put a ring on it. Like, what do you? And then so I said, do you want to be married? How many of you want to be married? And they all raised their hands. So I basically just told them, like, none of you are serious about this. Like, none of you take this seriously as an actual hard thing that needs to happen, like a real project, the same way that other projects are projects. All of you just think marriage is something that happens to you, maybe, or something. And I tried to take questions from the audience. I tried to debug a little bit. And, like, of course, you know, it's not chastisement is funny, but like not necessarily helpful. People have a bunch of different blocks and they're afraid and they've tried many things and maybe they have traumas that have kind of healed over and all sorts of things. It's really hard in cities also, I think. And I'm kind of curious about that. What's your diagnosis? Why so few percentage of people married?
It's a real puzzle. I have one perspective on it that I haven't really tested, so I don't know how it's going to land with people, but I think there's something going on with trauma and how we think about trauma that's like really confusing people.
Yeah.
I think we treat trauma as if it's like a deviation from the plan or like a bug in our operating system. And it's like, no, no, no,
Yep.
trauma is like an essential piece of cultural evolution. It's like how humanity has formed the level of coordination and collective
Yep.
identity that we have is that like as you're growing up, you get traumatized by the process of maturing and your sense of injustice and rebellion against your parents is the momentum you need to leave home
Yep.
and individuate and to learn how to take responsibility for yourself because you say, well, I can't count on those people because they're awful. And then you go into the world with a chip on your shoulder and you're like this kind of misshapen blob. And in my view, and what happened to me and what I've seen in a lot of married couples is you find someone who has some kind of compatibility with your particular traumatized self and you like it's actually your trauma that's essential for your bonding that
Yep.
like oh you have the thing that I miss and I have the thing that you miss and together the two of us fused together actually have sufficiency and it seems like we're living in a moment where people have this attitude that like I should be working on myself I like before I get into a relationship, I should have healed all this stuff. I need to deal with my
Yeah.
attachment issues, blah, 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 blah. And it's like by the time you've worked on yourself to the point where you don't have all of these hangups, like there's kind of no surface area anymore for you to bond on. You've become Teflon. And I'm
Yep.
like, I think we should be looking for someone that's like kind of good enough and
Yep.
also messed up and going,
Yep.
can we latch
Yep.
and
Yep. 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 Yep.
make something meaningful here? And that just
I love the
feels like
idea of
really
like you've become
countercultural.
Teflon. That's great. That's great. Yeah. Stop like turning yourselves into chrome. Be fucking messy. Like be little organic molecules that bond to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's horrifying. Like it's a horrifying, gross, disgusting, ugly, beautiful, wonderful, godly, divine thing. And like that's what it's like. It's what it's like to be a person. It's what it's like to have a kid. It's what it's like to get married. You know, there's so much kind of messy, ugly bits, and those are the best parts. Like that's the whole point of the thing. It also reminds me a little bit of EA's with by the way, I very much animal welfare is great, fantastic cause area. Sometimes with like wild animal suffering, I'm kind of like I understand their takes are actually more nuanced than this, but like the trivial thing is sort of like, oh, is it wild animal suffering when like the eagle destroys the rabbit, like eviscerates the rabbit, and then like it's still kind of alive and its blood is pumping and it's like being carried off and then like eaten as a meal and fed to the eagle's children. It's like, I don't know. No, it's great. It's fantastic. I love it. Like I watch it on the TV and I get invigorated. Like it excites me when I watch an animal hunt in a nature documentary, and it also horrifies me. And like you're allowed you're allowed to be horrified. You're allowed to be excited. Like both of the things are true. You are going to feel both ways with respect to kind of violence. And I feel like similarly with suffering, with trauma, you're allowed to feel both excited by your trauma and excited by other people's trauma and also horrified by it. And like all of that is kind of what's beautiful. And I think what is interesting in a good marriage from your perspective of good, and everyone kind of has their own system of value, I guess, in this sense. But like from my system of value, at least, what is beautiful to me in a marriage is when people look at all these horrifying, grotesque things and they see them as beautiful. And like they show me like one beautiful thing after another. Like the simplest possible example of this is that my wife once taught me how to like pickles. Like I didn't like pickles. And then I ate the pickle, and we really went into like baby brain for a second. I ate the pickle and I was like, see, but I don't like it because it's like yum, 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 yum. Like that's what the pickle tastes like to me. And she's like, she eats the pickle and she's like, I like it because it's like yum, 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 yum. The exact same expression that I made. And she's like, yum, 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 yum. It's good, good, yum, yeah. And I'm like, oh. And so I tried one more time and I was like, yum, yum, yum. And then I was like, oh, yeah, like actually that's good. That's what pickle is. Like pickle is it's nice. I like it. And so I don't know, it's fucking stupid, but there's just something beautiful about taking things you don't like and noticing how good they actually are and how like you were kind of the idiot all along to think that it was silly. So like in healing, I worry that we like are taking a stance on what's good in advance and trying to kind of like create like a chrome or a Teflon surface that's sort of like, hey, don't worry, none of my bad is going to get all over you. And it's like, no, 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 no. Like the person that loves you wants your
Yeah.
bad more than anyone.
Yeah.
They're like, your
Yeah.
bad is like my nutrition. And
Yeah.
and that's terrifying in some ways because you're like, no, but that's the bad stuff. But I
This
don't know.
is
That's just what
this
it's
is
like.
connected. This is connected to the asking for help thing. Someone taught me a lot about romance. A friend of mine, we weren't even romantically serious or anything, but I was doing this thing where like I would retract from the world when I was feeling low, and then I would show up when I was feeling high and positive. And she just told me, she kind of like slapped me in the face a little bit, like, dude, I don't only want to be your friend when you're feeling well, like
Right.
like do me the have some respect, like show me the rest
Yeah,
of
yeah,
you.
yeah. Right.
Show me who you are when you're a mess, and like let me choose if I want to get involved or not, but like don't withhold all of this stuff from me. Um, my other take on this is like, and it's so hard to articulate in a useful way. It just feels like I'm throwing something at the wall. But like, I do have this hunch that the men in particular around me have cultivated too much emotional intelligence. Like,
I love that.
it's like they're too curious about their inner worlds. They're too
Yeah,
involved
yeah,
in like
yeah,
there's a kind of brutish ignorance that actually
yeah.
is conducive to forming a good relationship.
Philosopher brute.
Yeah. Yeah. I just think, I don't know, that sometimes you'd be better served cultivating your self-efficacy and like building things in the world rather
Yeah,
than cultivating like a pristine inner landscape or being like hugely skillful in relationships.
yeah. I'm also just not confident what it means if you're like, how could you possibly consider yourself to be skillful in relationships if you want to be married and you're not married? That's just fundamentally that's the opposite of what skill means.
Mm,
So you have to just directly recognize like, oh, I'm not actually.
mm.
I'm bad at this. And instead of trying to get better at it, just go get married. You're gonna get better. You're gonna get better really fast, you know?
Man. Have you done anything where you actually feel like you've helped make your friends more marriageable?
Yeah, all sorts of things. I think, first of all, around us is a field of marriage, around Priya and I. I think, again, by the way, like playing a character a little bit in some ways, and also like there are humble aspects to all of this, but like, fuck that. It's not as interesting for the podcast, right? So I basically think that Priya and I inspire people by just showing off that like marriage is really fucking fun. It's awesome. Optionality is boring and stupid and like bad and gross anyway. Like what? Why would I want that when I could just be with Priya every day? Not just every day, but like every hour. Like we could just be on top of each other all the time. And people are like, "Oh, isn't that codependency?" It's like, "Yeah, fuck you. I'm codependent. If that's what you think that is, it's like, how do we independently have started multiple businesses, both together and separately. We have hundreds of collaborators. Like we built a community. If that's codependency, then like yes. And I'm very happy to have it for the rest of my life. I'll be codependent
Mm.
forever. And that's totally fine with me. And I think people are kind of looking at it and they're like, wow, they're just having so much fun all the time. And like, meanwhile, I'm dating and having so much fun in quotes, like the thing that is supposed to be fun, like going to dances and meeting new people and discovering their inner lives and like seeing the world or whatever in all these different ways and all these different people. And they're kind of like, man, this is kind of tiresome.
Mm.
And so I think there's kind of a little bit of a field around us that is sort of like, hey, marriage is amazing, fun, cool, exciting. And almost every single one of my close friends is sort of like longing for marriage now deeply. I don't pressure people into that, obviously, and I kind of tell them like why and when and how, and also how awesome it is, of course. But um, but overall, they tend to move toward it, and I suspect that this is a combination of selection effects and moving people's timelines up. Like one of my friends, I think I moved his timeline up on marriage by like about 10 years because he kind of had in his head when we first met, young, ambitious, wants to be kind of like a billionaire, and he was kind of like, first I'm gonna go get rich and I'm gonna like build my empire and do all my stuff. And it wasn't about sex to him. It wasn't like, oh, I want to go be with. He's just like he wanted to make something of himself because he believed that that person who he was going to be at the end of his journey was the man that somebody would want to marry. And I think
Mm.
what I was able to demonstrate clearly is
Mm.
sort of like you can't build an empire with your wife after you built the empire alone. Like that's not what that is. It's a fundamentally different thing. So if that's what you want to be at the top of some massive infrastructure project that you've built over a lifetime, and you want somebody to be there by your side, you have to marry her now before you succeed. There's no other option. In
Mm.
fact, like if you miss the boat on this, you will never again be able to marry somebody who builds something with you. Like you will have built it all. And so you could try to like get rid of it all and sell it all and like restart from scratch with somebody. And like people have done that. And that's very romantic. But um, but there's just a whole different life that you can live there. Uh, so I think we've influenced a lot of people in terms of setting people up. We're only okay at it.
Yeah.
I think it's helpful though. Oftentimes we'll get people like we'll give their mojo back by like setting them up with somebody and they're kind of like, oh, it wasn't the right date, but now I feel like going out there or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic
Yeah.
personally.
I think what we talked about last time about really having a vigilance towards kicking out the creeps.
Yeah.
And that means creating a space where especially the women feel they can drop their
Yeah.
guard and just kind of glow up and be themselves.
Yeah.
That just creates a kind of subtly erotic context
Yeah.
where like there's no pressure, but also there's chemistry. You just kind of smell it in the air. That there's this sort of like people suddenly are waking up to each other. I think that's the best that I know how to do. Well, yeah, that's one of the best things I know how to do at the moment is like just create conditions where people are at their best and
That's really good.
introduce new people to each other and
Yeah.
more in groups rather than one-on-one. I think the one-on-one is like a really weird, cringy sort of interview
Yeah.
kind of feeling. And then yeah, getting more like with my friends, quietly getting into conversation with them and understanding what's their thought process, like who are they thinking about and what are they attracted to, and getting a little bit in there with a bit of a slap of like,
Yeah.
why are you selecting? Some people are like actively selecting for things that they really don't actually want in a long-term partnership, and the other
Yeah.
ones are like, oh, I've generated this list of criteria which just cuts out 99% of people in the world. And I haven't found my one
Right.
yet. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't want to.
Yeah. I find, yeah, none of it has made sense to me. Obviously, I got really lucky, and people talk about like, oh, Andrew, you have secure attachment because of your parents or whatever. But like my history of romance, just for those listening who like wonder, is it possible? Can you do this? Can you just trust yourself? Is just like every single time I've ever dated somebody, I tried to marry them every time. I've never done a thing where I didn't. With the caveat of like a couple, like obviously I'm not an idiot. It's like not like my first 3 dates, I'm not thinking about it. But also like I've never gone on a first date and been like, I'm not going to try my best ever.
Mm.
I've never gone on a first date and been like, oh, this is just one date sort of thing. I would just leave personally. Um,
Mm.
that's not to say that that's how you need to act. And it's not out of a sense of chastity or like Christian, I don't know, whatever. But I think it's very clear to me that there is a move that you do with somebody to become married. And to become married, in my mind, is some. I mean, this is literally how I think about it internally. Like Priya and I imagine us as like we were on two different trajectories. You can imagine like stars flying through the galaxy. You could also imagine like vines growing or something, and then or like DNA literally being stitched together in the case of my daughter, I guess. Um, and so it, you kind of we're on two different trajectories, and then we're kind of meeting, and then immediately we start to entangle a little bit and like test the strength of that thing, and then you kind of like untwist a little bit and like retwist back together, and then all of a sudden you're like super fucking crazy entangled, infinitely dimensionally entangled forever, and then you're like, oh shit, things are crazy, and there's like hyper spaces that are being created internally in the dimensionality of these tangled of elements that you've created, and then so there's like massive chemistry that happens, and then you are just like, oh, I guess this is just what we are now collectively. There's a third thing. The third thing, you can decide if it's more important or less important than you individually. Personally, I find it more important than me individually. Um, Especially now that I mean, even before I had a daughter, because I knew I was planning on having one. And then but it's a third thing. And like each person needs to relate to it separately. So there's three things. There's me, there's her, there's the relationship. And then or the marriage, I would say. And so what it means to be married is that that bond is just kind of there with you all the time in every interaction, and you just really 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 like it, and you like tending to it so much. um I think that move of like trying to test if you want to become intertwined together like rope or like a braid that cannot be unwoven is a fundamentally different move than like I would like to spend time with the person just or even like I don't know. I've never done the other type of thing, so I can't even describe it. I'm sure other people could describe it. I've never done it, but
Mm.
I just feel like the move I'm making when I meet a woman, or when I met a woman in the past, I guess, and like almost every time, again, like just to be totally clear, like you can just meet a girl and that isn't to say that you immediately like latch on. There's no insecure attachment here. I'm not saying become anxious or insecure or whatever. Just like hold your boundaries, be in and of yourself, but like fundamentally take seriously like I'm drawn to the person. And so to I'm drawn to intertwining myself with the person. And then it's not just that you're going to create a marriage, but like at some point you start to feel like you're headed to the same place, your fates are interwoven. Like I've started to feel like my and obviously like you could think of these as either manifestations of a marriage or the truth depending on your personal perspective, but it's like I've started to feel like Priya is somebody who I've spent multiple lives with and somebody that I will spend multiple lives with, that like maybe our fates aren't just together for this life but like we are eternally bound to be together. And anyway, I don't know. I think maybe people don't realize how intense that is, first of all, and how nice it is to kind of lean into it.
Mm.
Maybe they're afraid of
Mm.
it. Obviously it is something to be afraid of. Like it's horrifying in many ways, in the sort of way I was talking about earlier. I should say it's not horrifying, it's awesome. And like
Yeah.
awesome is
Yeah.
can be scary, you
Ah.
know? Although that's never the approach I've had to it or the emotion I've had about it. Anyway, I don't know. Those are some of my thoughts on marriage. Maybe you
No.
have similar.
I echo a lot of it, this thing of entanglement. Um, yeah, the sense of mutual obligation, like, which sounds like such an unromantic word, but like the thing of I felt like in the early phase of my relationship with Nati, I was a complete mess, like really not a finished product, really emotionally immature and really unskillful. And still she saw something in me that she liked and stuck around for a while. And then she basically she would not tell the story this way, but I always do. That she gave me an ultimatum one day and she was like, look, dude, I'm into you, but you're gonna have to show up with some consistency or else I'm out of here. I can't have this like hot cold thing.
Yeah.
And it was literally the first time someone had just given me that direct feedback. And I stopped and I thought about it like a, rationalist. Okay, do I want to continue the way that I've been living and enjoy my freedoms and my random chaotic walk? Or do I want to attempt to make an earnest switch to actually prioritizing someone else's experience and like factoring them into my decision making every day or most days? Um, hmm. Well, I guess it's worth a try. I don't want to live without her, so let's try.
Yeah.
And since I made that like genuine, diligent effort to try, that's when it actually felt like we started a relationship. Before
Yeah.
that, I
Yeah.
was just like being a chaos agent. And then through relating with her, this is what I say about you shouldn't be too emotionally intelligent. Like, I feel like my relationship with her is what gave me access to my inner world. Like, I didn't know how to give language to my inner experience until I had really spent a lot of time being in a relationship with her because she brought a kind of curiosity to my experience that no one else had really, and a patience, that no one
Yep.
else had really brought. And so pretty quickly, I developed this sense of like, wow, I really owe you the world because you've given me access to like so much meaning and depth.
Yep.
And then later on, she got sick. And it's like, okay, well, now's my time to repay the favor, like I'm going to be there for her. And then fast forward a couple of years and it's like, well, she's given me a huge thing and I've given her a huge thing. And now it's like, we're so indebted to each other. And it's such a sweet thing,
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and at a certain point, again, a few years later, it's like, oh, I would like to, I would like to hold your hand when you're dying. Like that is a life purpose on its own, like just to
Yeah.
accompany
Yep.
someone
Yep.
through that last terrifying moment. And that's good. That's a good enough life purpose for me. It's a good enough mission. And once I got clear on that, it's like, oh, sweet. I'm
Yeah.
already like I'm on the track. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, God is good.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally. Yeah. God is good. It's like, oh, everything's all right.
Yeah,
Like in the way, like I could fail. It's again, it's another one of these safety nets, like we talked about in the last podcast, of like everything else could fail. I could lose it all. And like, at least I have your hand and we'll be
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and I think people, yeah, people who want that, like that's one of the benefits you get. The other thing I want to say on marriage is like, I just want to take really seriously for a second all the benefits of marriage, like that people might be just not getting married, not for any particular emotional block or because they're unskilled. Like maybe we've been a little bit mean so far. Like, what if you're just kind of rationally like, just doesn't make very much sense, dude. Like, nobody's explained to me the benefits. We've talked about a couple of them now, but only the most romantic ones. I think like, let's say you're kind of really like you understand romance, but you understand it on your own. You don't really care about my concepts of romance. Just rationally, uh almost every good thing that I've done has like stood on the foundation of my marriage since I got married. And that's something that you can do. It's kind of like starting, like people talk about like starting workers cooperatives, or they talk about starting like mutual banking or whatever. It's like, yeah, I have that. It's called my wife, and we have like a shared bank account where we each put money in. Like we both make money, we both put money into the bank account. Like that's awesome. We do like a completely flexible distribution of labor on almost all life tasks. I never do anything alone that I don't have to do alone ever. It just doesn't happen. If I don't want to do my taxes, I do my taxes with my wife. If I don't want to do my chores, I do my chores with my wife. And then other times I do want to do my chores, and other times my wife doesn't want to do my chores, and then I do them. And it's like, oh, it's just a perfect flexible balancing of load across two instead of one in terms of my ability to trust other people. So like let's say you're an
mm,
agent in the world and I want to work with you on a project, but you are kind of like a hippie and you're not just trying to do like a capitalist transactional project, which like that's great because I'm like that. You want to play long games with me. if you're not married, I'm just not going to play a 30-year game with you, brother. Like, I'm so sorry, but you cannot be trusted to be the same person for 30 years. Once you're married, I trust it.
Mm,
You know, like you might get
mm,
divorced, but first of all, nobody's banking on that. I'm not banking on that. And so, like, I'm going to put my faith in your marriage because I think that the two is better than one. And I'm going to do a partnership with your family. And that partnership 100% is going to last 30 years, or it's much more likely to last 30 years than just like partnership with an individual because individuals change so much. And plus, you're going to have to get married later. And once you get married, your whole life trajectory is going to change fundamentally. And like what you are is going to change fundamentally. And there's going to be this new thing that you have even more loyalty to. So once you have your
mm,
family, you can coordinate with other families on 30-year or 50-year or 100-year projects a lot more easily. Another thing that you can do with marriage that you otherwise couldn't do, in my opinion, is like starting giant communities like the one that we've created at Fractal or the one that Rich is creating with Casatilo. It's sort of like, would people trust myself? Would people trust Rich as much if we were single men? There are good reasons why no.
mm.
For instance, why not married? Like
Yeah,
that's kind of the
yeah,
classic
yeah,
question that one
yeah.
needs to ask. And so we get a lot of benefit in terms of people being able to trust our intentions and our goals and our vision for our projects because they know that we have stable intentions and stable visions um, that are going to last the test of time because that's what we claim our projects are going to be able to do as well. Uh, and all of that stuff gets more powerful because you get the investment of all the people who believe in your partner as well as all the people who believe in you. So it's like all of Priya's friends are my friends and they offer me help. And so and then there's the marriage itself, and which means there's Fractal itself. So there's all these things built on top of the marriage. And any friend of those things is my friend, regardless of whether they know either Priya or I. Like there are people who will come to me and they're kind of just like, I know you guys and I trust you and I like you and I want to help you. And I'm like, I have never met you before. And they're like, but I know your marriage because of all this stuff that you do on the internet or whatever. I don't think personally
Mhm,
I would have been able to do that for myself. Some people can, they can build like these personal brands that are bigger than them, but like it's not for me. It's
mm,
much easier for me to build a marriage that's bigger than me than to build like a personal brand that's bigger than me. So if you want any of that stuff, also by the way, having a daughter is like the most meaningful and wonderful thing. Like I just can't possibly describe how good it is and how wonderful to like have my wife with me and my daughter with me and we're just like all playing together and like wrestling. And you might think like, oh, I want emotional connection with people. It's like, brother, emotional connection with your daughter. Like look her in the eyes. She's so good. And you're gonna learn things about the world that are just so fundamentally good. And by the way, who are you going to become? Like,
mm,
like you were saying, in terms of betting on you, like I am just a better man. I'm a better
mm,
man. I'm stronger. I'm wealthier. I have more virtue. I have better friendships. I'm more stable. I'm more emotionally resilient. I care more. Like my flaws are constantly pointed out to me in ways that are deeply loving. And so I'm just like, oh shit, you're totally right. I can keep getting better. And so like my trajectory that I plot for myself is so much more effective now that I have a marriage. When we first got married, Priya and I asked, or like I told Priya, or she told me, I mean, no, we're the same person. Like one of us told one of the other ones, um, you know, this thing, if we do it, it's going to feel like we're holding onto a rocket ship for dear life. And it's not going to be comfortable. You know, we're just going to be holding on. And I was like, or one of us was like, do you want to do that with me? Is like that what you want?
mm,
And
mm,
we were like, yes, clearly. So there's just this sense in which like we built a rocket ship and we can hold on to it together. I was not going to build a rocket ship on my own. It wasn't going to
mm.
happen. I was going to like maybe try and then tinker in my garage for a long time or something. Um, anyway, do you have anything to add?
I do. I do. Just a little bit on that topic. One is on the rocket ship thing. We're building a rocket ship, and one of the awesome things about it is we're allowed to quit.
Yep.
Like we have reinvented ourselves a few times, and having that steady commitment that says we're going to do it together.
Yep.
We're going to give it our best. If it completely disintegrates and turns to shit, it's fine. We'll do something
Yep.
else. We'll do it together. Like that is really reassuring. I wanted to give one more benefit of marriage as well, which is just that like once I started wearing this ring, because I didn't wear a ring when we first got married. It only
Mm-hmm.
came a bit later because I was pretty anti-marriage and I got married anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Congrats.
thanks. I remember the first time after we'd been married for a while that I left Nati behind and I went away for a week and we are at this sort of like party festival place. And it was so obvious that the ring changed how I was perceived in the room. And I think it was one of these moments where I was probably one of the only married guys there. And like because people think about the downside of commitment is that you're giving up optionality. And it's like it was obvious that in the past I would have gone to an event and be like, oh, who are all the hot babes here? And like where am I in the pecking order? And like, do I have a chance with someone? And like all of that game was switched off because I'd like disqualified myself with the ring. And while I gave up like the possibility of some really annoying one night stands, what I gained was the sense that like all of these women can be my sisters. And that's so cool. It's so
Yeah.
cool to like, it's like I'm
Yeah.
meeting women again as like a new species, which is just like, oh, I'm not trying to sleep with you. You trust me more. And we can talk about what your actual life is like and we can exchange like brother and sister. And that's awesome, dude. Like I would happily give up all the optionality in the world for that. So I wanted to give a plus one to that. Also, I'm thinking about our unmarried friends and like what is there of what we're saying that's actually useful.
Yeah.
Um, I think one thing is like one thing I want to propose as a suggestion, and I don't know if it's good advice or not, but it's just what's in my heart is like if you feel from what we're describing, if you feel this yearning for like, wow, that sounds really good. I think it's good to get really actually quite attached to that vision of a good marriage and just get attached to the vision and hold loosely to the person and like don't get so tight when you're dating someone that they feel choked and constricted, but do actually hold really tightly to your vision of what the good life looks like and make diligent efforts to like get closer and closer to your good life every day and then invite someone into it. That's the first thing. And then the second thing I think is just and potentially more helpful is like just to let you know that there's a lot of us, your married friends, that like there's a lot of us that give this a lot of thought and we are really rooting for you and like
We're rooting for you. Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like we want it. We want you to be happy. We want you to be happy. If you're married or unmarried, obviously we want you to be happy.
but this in particular, yeah, we're co-creating the marriage field and we're gonna get you
Yeah,
intoxicated with it.
yeah, yeah. And like if you want, obviously, like no pressure. You don't gotta get married, but like here are a bunch of reasons. Also, if you want to talk to me about this, literally anytime, just DM me. It's my favorite thing. People getting
Yeah.
married is my favorite thing. I love going to my friends' weddings. Like there was there was what I would describe as the first fractal wedding
Mm.
just happened like a couple months ago, and like I was crying. Like the whole thing, it was just so beautiful because Priya and I's wedding hardly counted. It was like really toward the early beginnings of Fractal. And also, we just had a really, really small family wedding. So, like, even though Daniel officiated and Jake was my best man, who are both core Fractal contributors, it was just like a really small little squad that was there at the wedding. It was like 25 people total. And this wedding was like 100 people, and like all of my friends were there, and the whole community was around, and plus people's families. And it was in Brooklyn. It was so wonderful.
Yeah.
So there is a real sense in which, like, man, we just want more people to find love if that's what they want. And I'd love to help. Yeah.
I just feel like we've revealed the hidden agenda of all of this community building work. It's like we're making good families. That's the game. That's that's
Yeah.
pretty much the game. And it feels good to get behind the yeah, all the smoke and mirrors and just get to the actual real issue.
Yeah. Um, oh man. I love marriage. That's a good one. I feel like there was one more marriage thing that was really worth mentioning. Oh, there's one thing for men in particular that I think I'm just getting it all. You're
Yeah,
getting
yeah,
all of
get it
the
out.
advice
Check
all
it
at
out.
once. Um, one thing for men in particular that I really reflected on as super helpful was Simon Saris tweeted once like a problem that you might be having is just that you don't love women enough. It's
Mm.
not about this particular woman. It's just like love all of the women. I suspect for the listeners of this podcast, that's not remotely as big of a problem, but like sometimes in tech circles or in online circles, I think you can be afraid of women or you can be afraid. And like, it's like the divine woman. It's not about any particular woman. Like, you might love some particular woman, but you have to love all the women. You have to love them all as a class. And like, that's a weird thing to say in some ways. It's like, oh, normally we don't divide people into classes or whatever. But there's something about just loving womanhood, loving femininity, loving girls, loving children who are women, like loving adults who are women, just like loving what it means for somebody to be a woman itself, that helps you as a man see your potential future wife for what and who she is, and in more people as well. And so if you're kind of struggling to find the one, sometimes it's because you haven't yet found like the whole thing that you are marrying, because you're marrying into this, you're marrying into the gender as well. And I don't know, I found that interesting to think about. It's something that like certainly came very naturally to me, I think, but to some people, like I think they genuinely are like a little bit weirded out by women and femininity or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, there's one more thing. I really want people to, I think there's a lot of really messed up memes around gender, sex, dating, relationships. Really popular ideas, which are just not likely to actually be very good for people.
Yeah.
And so I would give advice, which is notice who you're taking advice from. Notice who you're letting imprint your brain with, like, what is a good relationship? What is a good destination? What are some good terms that you actually, what are the protocols or the norms that you want to live in? Notice where you're getting influence from, and like what actually feels like a wholesome influence, and seek out more of those.
Yep. Okay, the final thing that I want to talk about, maybe I'll talk about more things, so I don't know, maybe if I should say that, but like, I do just want to address polyamory a little bit. I don't want to get anything controversial. I'm not trying to be mean. I like my poly friends, and I maybe know a couple poly marriages that I'm optimistic about that are upcoming. However, I think there is a trend that I can spot amongst some poly people, to be quite careful here, that is sort of like wanting to be married very badly and saying that you are intending to be married very badly for quite some time. And kind of like all of the potential partnerships kind of fall through a little bit. And if that's happening to you in particular, one piece of advice that I would just give on, you're not here, so I can't ask if you want it, is uh, maybe try to have a monogamous marriage that you turn into a poly marriage after you marry, because it could be that the person that you're marrying is jealous or afraid at an instinctual level that you will prioritize somebody else over them even once ever for the rest of your life, which is like not what you can do in a marriage. In a marriage, you put one person above all other people forever, for eternity. And like, not every marriage is the same, but like, that's my type of marriage. And so, like, if you want my type of marriage, if you want the sort of thing that I have, like, I put my wife first above everyone forever. And I committed to all future lifetimes too, in my head. So, literally for eternity, forever. And so, if you even have a single possible threat to that, and like, yeah,
I think the internet god
my
censored you. Whatever you were
the
saying
internet
was too
god censored
powerful.
me. The internet god censored me. What I was saying was too powerful. Anyway, the major point I'm just trying to make is like, you can imagine how it might be very, very easy to um like, okay, let's role play for a second, not necessarily you and me, Rich, but you and me, the viewer. Let's say I ask you, hey, do I come first forever? Am I the only one that matters to you above all other people forever? And then you're like, Yes, 100%. And then I ask you, okay, will you be monogamous for me? Like, will you be 100% monogamous for me and not sleep with anybody else ever for the rest of your life? And you say no. Well, that is kind of compromising on the thing that you just said to me a second ago, which is that you will put me first in every situation. Now, obviously, I shouldn't use the fact that you're putting me first as a bludgeon against you because that's horrible. You could end up in abusive relationships or abusive marriages, and that's not what I'm asking you to do or telling you to do to your reader or to your listener. But I think that perhaps if somebody says, well, will you be monogamous for me and not sleep with anybody else forever for the rest of your life, you should say yes. Yes, I would do that for you. That's a gift that I would give you because I love you and because I want to marry you. I would give up all other sexual partners forever. And then maybe after you do that and you make that promise, you can negotiate on the other side some like, hey, like actually in our marriage, like this isn't that big of a deal. Like we found out it wasn't a big deal. Like maybe we don't care actually, LOL. And then like a lot of married people have all sorts of weird things that they do. But going through the trial of giving up something so important to you is a sign of your commitment. Just, you don't have to do that, but possible advice if you're struggling.
I think you have been very thoughtful and considerate, and I want to be rude for a second. If sleeping with multiple people is so important to you, you're immature. Most of the time. Most of the time, that's the case. That's all. We have to drop the microphone. Say goodnight.
All right. Okay. How long we been here? We've been here for a while, huh?
We're over time.
All right.
Thank you for tuning into the Marriage Podcast. I'm sorry that I offended my poly friends. I do love you. I want what's best for you. I did take a cheap shot. I do believe
this was
it.
a great one. I'm excited for the next one. I feel like we got somewhere with this.
Yeah. Our next conversation, you're going to convince me to have babies. So that'll be interesting.
Oh wait, are you currently on? You're like maybe not.
Oh, I'm definitely not. But
definitely not. Okay, well,
yeah, but
I don't
you bring
try
so
to
much
convince
passion
people,
to the topic.
but I don't try to convince people. But if it would be fun, yeah, we could do one where we go back and forth, and I try to convince you. I don't know if that's interesting to you.
Yeah, let's see. Man, it's been a pleasure.
Okay, bye, Rich.
Talk soon.